Republicans get back to work today with several votes planned, but the controversial concessions agreed to by Speaker Kevin McCarthy are still raising concerns among Democrats and even some members of the GOP. CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane is on the Hill and joins us now to talk more about this. All right, Scott, explain. We've all heard that Speaker McCarthy made concessions to the extreme right wing of his party. What are those concessions? And now, what are you hearing from the rest of the House, at least the Republican conference?
A lot of these were hashed out, Vlad, during the internal rules package deliberations. A lot of that sounds like inside baseball. To a degree it is, but it could very much impact the legislation we see out of this Congress moving forward. What Speaker McCarthy did, without hesitation, was put some members of this farther right Freedom Caucus on key positions, or give them a sense they'll be on key committee spots, including the House Rules Committee, which touches every piece of legislation that goes on the U.S. House floor, giving them some outsized influence, even though this group is smaller in number. But the bottom line is, there has been this consternation about a 3-page addendum to the rules package, something that's circulating in some part of the U.S. House. Some Republican members say they want to see it. Some members of the public may want to see it, but it doesn't seem to exist in reality, or hasn't surfaced in reality, which raises the provocative question, what else has Speaker McCarthy promised that we don't know about yet?
So is this what they're calling the shadow document?
Yeah, that's the shadow document. Maybe it's 3 pages in length, maybe it's a little shorter, maybe it's a little longer. But from our reporting, our CBS News reporting over the past 24 hours, we know one of the assurances Speaker McCarthy appears to have given this group of House Republicans is a promise that the newly approved subcommittee the House has come up with on the weaponization of the federal government will have as much staff or as much resources as the House January 6th committee had last Congress, giving this seemingly amorphous committee a very broad amount of power and ability to investigate, well, anything in the federal government with which they disapprove. That's going to be a story that is a foundational story in this upcoming Congress.
Wait, Scott, did you say the weaponization of the federal government? What does that mean?
They call it the weaponization of the federal government. The supporters of this newly approved subcommittee say it's to investigate overreach or stop the deep state from reaching into Americans' lives or reaching into legislators' lives. Some of the people supporting this were the same members of Congress who were under scrutiny by the January 6th committee for denying the 2020 election results. Anne Marie, Democrats have characterized this new committee as the tinfoil hat committee.
You know, it's remarkable that all of a sudden Republicans and politicians are interested in what the specifically Department of Justice, the FBI, is doing when it comes to their activities, when Black people and people of color in this country have known for years, going back to the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, that the FBI often in those decades overstepped their bounds illegally, in ranging from illegal wiretapping of Martin Luther King Jr. to the subversion of groups, political groups in this country who were exercising their constitutional right to protest. But all of a sudden now, in 2023, people say, wait a second, we should really be looking at what the FBI is doing. So, Scott, let me ask you about this. House Republicans have made it clear that they intend to pursue an investigation into documents discovered at an office used by Joe Biden prior to his run for president. Kentucky Congressman James Comer talked about this yesterday on Red and Blue. I want to play a bit of that.
We simply want to know the same things we asked when Mar-a-Lago was raided. Who has which documents? What level of classification are we talking about here? How many documents? And what was the process involved with making the decision to raid Mar-a-Lago versus the decision to apparently do nothing with President Biden?
So does the White House Oversight Committee, the House Oversight Committee, which Comer chairs, what do they have planned?
Yeah, it kind of is the White House Oversight Committee, though, Vlad. They've made clear they're going to be aggressive with their investigations of the Biden administration. James Comer of Kentucky, from whom you just heard, the chairman of this committee, says he's got a deadline, 2 weeks, for the White House to turn over records about these documents found in a Biden-affiliated office just across the street here on Capitol Hill. Also, the top Republican on the House Intelligence Committee, Michael Turner of Dayton, Ohio, says he's asked the Director of National Intelligence to do a damage assessment of what might have been exposed by classified records being where they shouldn't be. But this is just like our previous topic, the weaponization of federal government. Both of these investigations come with a political reality. There are constituents of these Republican members who demand an investigation into anything involving Joe Biden, but also demand investigations into what they deem to be a witch hunt into Donald Trump. So there's a political foundation to these investigations, these members of Congress representing their constituents in their political bases, and Democrats pushing back on it, representing their constituents and their political bases. You can't divorce any of this from politics.
No, you cannot, Scott. Thank you very much.